I have conditions, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. David Stoner, billionaire CEO, and once the love of her life, watched her with those penetrating eyes that had always seen right through her defenses. Name them, he said simply. First, I want complete access to your medical records and treatment plans. If I'm carrying your child, I deserve to know exactly what's happening to you. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Second, you'll be involved in every aspect of this pregnancy, every appointment, every decision, every milestone. This isn't a transaction. It's a child. Our child. Again, David nodded, a hint of surprise crossing his features. Diamond set down her glass and stepped closer to him, close enough to catch the familiar scent of his cologne. And third, her voice dropped to a whisper, if you want me to carry your child tonight, you have to do it from the back. David's eyes widened slightly. What? You heard me. Her voice cracked with emotion. I can't look into your eyes when we do this. I can't see your face, because if I do, I'll remember everything we were, everything we could have been, and She paused, swallowing hard. I'll fall apart, and I need to stay whole, for this child, for myself. In the heavy silence that followed, David's gaze never left her face. Then he stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I accept your terms, he murmured. All of them. Hello, family. This is Dr. Phillips, and tonight's story will take you on a journey of heartbreak, redemption, and the true meaning of legacy. Before we dive deeper, if you're new here, welcome to Love and Twilights, where we explore the complex terrain of human relationships through stories that will move you, challenge you, and perhaps even change how you see love itself. If you're a returning friend, thank you for joining me again tonight. And if you're new here, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss a single moment. David Stoner sat alone in his penthouse office, the Manhattan skyline, a glittering backdrop to the grim scene unfolding at his desk. Outside his window, the city pulsed with life and possibility. Inside, death was making its intentions known. The medical report lay open before him, its clinical language doing nothing to soften the blow. Fourth opinion, same verdict. The tumor was inoperable. 6 months, maybe less. Experimental treatments might buy him time, but the outcome was inevitable. At 42, David had built an empire. Stoner Enterprises dominated 4 industries, employed thousands, and had made him one of the richest men in America. His face had graced the cover of Forbes twice. His innovations had changed how the world did business. Yet none of it mattered now, as he stared at the brain scans that showed the mass steadily consuming his future. He closed the file and pressed the intercom button. Send in my 6 o'clock. Ms. Anita has just arrived, Mr. Stoner, his assistant responded. David straightened his tie and stood, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows. He needed to appear strong and control. The tremor in his right hand had worsened in the past week, but he'd mastered the art of concealment. Hands in pockets, left hand dominant for handshakes. No one could know. Not yet. The door opened, and with it came a rush of memories so potent he nearly staggered. Diamond Anita walked into his office like she belonged there, though. It had been 5 years since she'd last crossed this threshold. Her dark hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, framing high cheekbones, and full lips that were set in a careful, neutral expression. She wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and provocative, highlighting curves that had haunted his dreams long after he'd forced himself to let her go. David, she said, extending her hand in a businesslike gesture that broke his heart a little. It's been a while. 5 years, 3 months, and 17 days. But who was counting? Diamond. He took her hand, ignoring the electricity that still sparked between them. Thank you for coming on such short notice. She reclaimed her hand and settled into one of the chairs across from his desk, crossing her legs with deliberate grace. Your message said it was urgent, and when a man worth $4 billion says urgent, I've learned to pay attention. David returned to his seat, studying her face. He searched for traces of the passionate art student he'd fallen for nearly 6 years ago, the woman who'd painted his portrait and captured something in his eyes that even he hadn't recognized. The woman who'd loved him before Stoner Enterprises exploded, before he'd transformed from promising entrepreneur to ruthless CEO, before he'd made the biggest mistake of his life by letting her go. I have a proposition for you, he said, forcing himself to focus on the present, on the limited future he had left. One perfectly arched eyebrow rose. Business or pleasure? Neither. Both. He pushed a folder across his immaculate desk. I need an heir. Diamond's composure cracked for just a moment, her eyes widening before she regained control. She opened the folder, scanned the first page of the contract inside, then closed it with a sharp snap. You want me to have your baby. Her voice was carefully neutral. For $20 million? 25, actually. The final page includes the additional $5 million trust for the child. Diamond leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Why me? You could have any woman in New York. Models, socialites, ambitious executives who'd see carrying the Stoner heir as a career opportunity. David stood, turning back to the windows, to the empire he'd built that now seemed as fragile as his health. I'm dying, Diamond. The silence that followed was absolute. When he turned back, her face had gone pale, those expressive eyes wide with shock. The symptoms started 6 months ago. Headaches, vision problems, tremors in my right hand. He held it up, demonstrating the almost imperceptible shake. Inoperable brain tumor. I have 6 months, maybe a year with treatment. My God, David. She stood, instinctively moving toward him before catching herself. I'm so sorry. I don't want your sympathy, he said sharply. I want your DNA. Diamond blinked. Excuse me? You're brilliant, beautiful, and you have a steel core most men mistake for softness. My child would be lucky to have half your qualities. He returned to his desk. The contract gives you full custody. All I ask is that you tell them about me someday. Let them know I wanted them, even if I never got to meet them. Diamond picked up the contract again, flipping through pages. Does anyone else know about your diagnosis? Just my medical team. And now you, not even Marcus? She asked, referencing his closest friend and business partner. David shook his head. The board would force me out if they knew. I intend to run this company until I physically can't anymore. Diamond stood abruptly. I need time to think. I don't have time, he said, the words sharper than he intended. More quietly, he added, but take 24 hours. That's all I can give. At the door, she paused, her hand on the knob. Why this way, David? Why not just date someone, fall in love, make a baby the traditional way? The pain that flashed across his face was gone so quickly she might have imagined it. I don't have time for love, he said, and love doesn't have time for me. After Diamond left, David remained at his desk until the city lights came on, transforming Manhattan into a galaxy of earthbound stars. His office phone rang, the private line only 3 people had access to. What did she say? Marcus Delgado's voice was tense with concern. She's thinking about it. David massaged his temples, fighting the headache that had become his constant companion. And if she says no? She won't. How can you be so sure? David closed his eyes. Because she's Diamond. And despite everything, despite what I did to her, she still has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Marcus sighed. You know there are other ways to secure your legacy. The foundation, the hospital wing. I don't want buildings with my name on them, David interrupted. I want something real, something alive. Something of you and Diamond, Marcus said quietly. Yes. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. You never told me why you ended things with her, Marcus finally said. You were happier with Diamond than I'd ever seen you. David stared at a photograph on his desk, hidden in the bottom drawer but never forgotten. Diamond on the dock of his lake house, the sunset setting her skin aglow, her smile wide and carefree. Because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid she'd distract me from building the company. Afraid I'd have to choose between her and success. A bitter laugh escaped him. And now I have all the success in the world and no time left to enjoy it. Ironic, isn't it? David, I have to go. Board meeting in 10 minutes. He hung up before Marcus could respond, before his oldest friend could offer comfort he didn't deserve. On his way to the conference room, David passed his assistant's desk. Andrea, I need you to arrange something for me. Andrea looked up, ever efficient. Of course, Mr. Stoner, the Imperial Suite at the Regent. Tomorrow night. Champagne, flowers. No, she doesn't like roses. Orchids, white ones. He paused. And privacy. Absolute privacy. For you and Ms. Anita. The name felt both foreign and achingly familiar on his tongue. If she calls to accept my offer. Diamond's loft in Brooklyn was her sanctuary, a converted warehouse space, filled with light and art and the organized chaos of a creative mind. Tonight, it felt like a prison as she paced, the contract sitting on her coffee table like a live grenade. David Stoner, the only man who'd ever broken through her carefully constructed defenses. The man who'd discarded her when his company needed his complete focus. The man who was now dying and wanted her to carry his child. Her phone rang. Naomi, her gallery manager and closest friend. "Tell me you didn't agree to whatever crazy proposition the great David Stoner offered," Naomi said without preamble. "Hello to you too," Diamond sighed. News travels fast. When you're spotted entering Stoner Tower after hours, people talk, especially people who remember how destroyed you were when he ended things. Diamond sank onto her sofa. "He's dying, Naomi." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. "Brain tumor, 6 months. He wants an heir before he goes, and he wants me to be the mother. For what? Money? Guilt? $25 million. Full custody. No strings." Naomi whistled. "That's not a proposition. That's a golden parachute." "I don't need his money," Diamond said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Her art was critically acclaimed but not commercially successful enough to fund the community art center she dreamed of building. "Then why are you even considering it?" Diamond stared at a painting on her wall, one she'd created during the darkest period after David had ended their relationship. Dark blues and purples, shattered patterns that somehow still formed a coherent whole. "Because despite everything, I never stopped loving him," she whispered. "And the idea of something of him remaining in this world after he's gone." "Oh, Diamond," Naomi's voice softened. "Just be sure you're doing this for the right reasons. Not out of guilt or nostalgia or a misplaced sense of obligation. What would be the right reason? That's something only you can answer." After they hung up, Diamond sat in silence, memories washing over her. David in his first apartment, before the billions, sketching business plans while she painted. David's expression the first time she told him she loved him. The coldness in his eyes the day he ended things. "I need someone who understands that my company comes first," he'd said. "You deserve better than what I can give you." Now he was dying, and all he wanted was to leave a piece of himself behind. Diamond picked up her phone and texted a single word, "Yes." The response came almost immediately. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m., the Regent. Ask for the Imperial Suite." Diamond spent the next day in a haze of preparation and second thoughts. She painted furiously for hours, trying to exorcise the emotions storming through her. The resulting canvas was a riot of reds and golds, passion and uncertainty swirled together in a way that made her heart ache. She chose her outfit carefully, a simple emerald dress that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, elegant but not trying too hard, as if there was anything casual about agreeing to have a dying billionaire's baby. The Regent was the most exclusive hotel in Manhattan, a bastion of old-world luxury. The staff treated her with the deference reserved for the ultra-wealthy, though she wondered if they knew why she was really there. The Imperial Suite occupied the entire top floor. When the elevator doors opened directly into the foyer, Diamond stepped into a scene that took her breath away. The lights of Manhattan glittered through. Floor-to-ceiling windows, candles flickered on every surface. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, and David stood by the windows, a silhouette against the city lights, looking more like the man she'd fallen for than the tycoon he'd become. "I thought we'd make this as natural as possible," he said, pouring her a glass of sparkling water. "No medical interventions unless we have to." Diamond accepted the glass, noting the tremor in his hand had worsened. "How are you feeling?" "Like a man with purpose," he said, not answering the question she was really asking. "Thank you for doing this." The tension between them crackled with unspoken history, desire, and the awareness of why they were here. "I signed the papers," she said, "but I have conditions of my own." David gestured for her to continue. "First, I want your medical team's contact information. I want to be kept informed of your condition, treatments, everything." He nodded, though reluctantly. "Second, I want you involved in the pregnancy. Doctor's appointments, ultrasounds, decisions. If we're creating a life together, even under these circumstances, we do it together." His expression softened. "I'd like that." Diamond took a deep breath. "And third, if you want me to carry your child tonight, you have to do it from the back." David's eyes widened slightly. Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't this. "I can't look into your eyes," she explained, her voice low. "I can't see your face when we do this, because if I do, I'll remember everything we were, everything we could have been, and I'll fall apart." Understanding dawned in his eyes. followed by a shadow of regret. "Diamond, those are my terms," she said firmly. "Take them or leave them." The air between them seemed to vibrate with tension. Then David stepped closer until she could feel the heat of his body. "I accept your terms," he murmured, his voice dropping to the tone that had always made her shiver. "All of them." Have you ever made a decision that changed your entire life in an instant? A choice that you knew, even as you were making it, would alter everything that came after. If you have, you'll understand what Diamond felt in that hotel suite. If you haven't, keep watching, because this story might just show you how. A single moment of courage can transform even the most broken hearts. If you're finding yourself drawn into Diamond and David's story, please hit that like button right now. It helps more people discover our channel, and trust me, you'll want to stay for what happens next. What followed was nothing like the clinical conception Diamond had tried to prepare herself for. David's touch was both familiar and new, awakening memories her body had never forgotten. His lips traced patterns on her skin that made her gasp. His hands remembered exactly how to make her come undone. When he finally took her as she'd stipulated, Diamond was grateful he couldn't see her face, couldn't witness the tears that slipped from beneath her closed eyelids as pleasure and pain twined together in her heart. His movements were gentle yet insistent, his breath hot against her neck as he whispered her name like a prayer. Afterward, they lay in silence, not touching, the weight of what they'd done, what they were trying to create, hanging between them. "I never stopped loving you," David said quietly to the darkness. "I just thought my ambition was more important than love. I was wrong." Diamond didn't respond. By morning he was gone, leaving only a note with his doctor's contact information and the words, "Thank you for giving me hope." The 6 weeks that followed were a strange limbo for Diamond. She painted obsessively, taught her classes at the community center, met with gallery owners about upcoming shows. On the surface, life continued as normal, but underneath, every moment was colored by the possibility growing inside her. She found herself watching mothers with their children in the park, wondering if she would soon join their ranks. She researched pregnancy, birth, early childhood development. She began to see her loft through new eyes, imagining where a crib might go, how she would need to childproof the stairs. And she thought about David, about what he was facing, about the cruel irony of a man who had everything and was about to lose it all. On the morning of the 6th week, Diamond sat in her bathroom staring at the positive pregnancy test. Despite knowing it was a possibility, the whole point, in fact, seeing the confirmation sent a wave of complex emotions through her. She was carrying David Stoner's child, a child who might never know its father. Her phone rang, displaying David's number. Taking a deep breath, she answered. "I'm pregnant," she said without preamble. His exhale was audible. "You're sure?" "Just confirmed it. I'll make a doctor's appointment this week. I want to be there," he said. "For everything, like you asked." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. "Okay. I'll text you the details." There was a pause, then, "Diamond?" "Yes, thank you." The simple gratitude in his voice made her throat tighten. "You're welcome." She hung up before he could hear her crying. The first doctor's appointment was awkward. They sat in the waiting room like strangers, though David's name on her insurance card and his obvious wealth ensured they received VIP treatment. The ultrasound showed little more than a tiny blur, but the sound of the heartbeat, fast, determined, already fighting to live, brought unexpected tears to David's eyes. "That's our child," he whispered, his gaze fixed on the monitor. Diamond watched him, saw the wonder on his face, and something shifted inside her. This wasn't just a transaction anymore. This wasn't just about money or legacy or even her lingering feelings for David. This was about the tiny life they'd created, a life that deserved to be loved and cherished for however long its father had left. As the pregnancy progressed, Diamond was surprised by David's commitment. Despite his deteriorating condition, the tremors worse, now accompanied by occasional slurred speech and bouts of intense pain he tried to hide, he attended every appointment. He helped research birthing options, ordered pregnancy books by the dozen, and even showed up at her loft one day with a team of contractors to convert her spare room into a nursery. "You don't have to do all this," she told him as they reviewed paint samples. "I want to," he said simply. "It's the only thing that makes sense anymore." Gradually, inevitably, the walls between them began to crumble. David shared details of his treatment, the experimental drug trial that might buy him extra months. Diamond opened up about her art, her dreams for creating spaces where underprivileged children could express themselves creatively. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the sunset, David reached for her hand. "I've been thinking about your community arts center idea." Diamond looked at him, surprised. "You have?" "I've set up a foundation. The Stoner Foundation for Arts Education. It's fully funded, with you as the director." He handed her a file. "If you want it." Diamond flipped through the pages, her heart racing. "David, this is everything I've dreamed of. Consider it my way of making amends for not supporting your dreams when we were together." She looked up at him, really looked at him. His face was thinner, the shadows under his eyes darker, but his gaze was clear, sincere, filled with the warmth she'd fallen in love with years ago. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for this, but for changing. Dying has a way of clarifying priorities," he said with a wry smile. "I just wish I'd figured it out sooner." The moment hung between them, heavy with possibility and regret. Then David winced, pressing a hand to his temple. "Another headache?" Diamond asked, immediately concerned. "It'll pass," he said, but his voice was strained. Without thinking, Diamond moved closer, guiding his head to her lap. Gently, she massaged his temples, the way she used to when he worked too late during their time together. "Better?" she asked after a few minutes. "Much," he murmured, his eyes closed. "I've missed this. Miss you." Diamond's hands stilled. "David." "I know," he interrupted. "I know I have no right to say that. No right to want more than what we've agreed to." He sat up, his movements careful. "I should go." Diamond caught his hand as he stood. "Stay. Please. It's late, and you shouldn't drive when you have a headache." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take the couch." But that night, as a summer storm raged outside, Diamond found herself standing in her bedroom doorway, watching David pretend to sleep on her too small sofa. His face was tense with pain he thought no one could see. "David," she called softly. He opened his eyes, finding her silhouette in the darkness. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. Come to bed, a real bed." He followed her to the bedroom, hesitating at the threshold. "Diamond, I don't expect—" "I know," she interrupted. "Just sleep. You need rest." They lay side by side in the darkness, listening to the rain, acutely aware of each other's presence. Diamond could feel the heat of his body, just inches away, could hear his measured breathing. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. There was a long pause. Then, yes, not of dying exactly, but of leaving things unfinished, unsaid. Diamond turned to face him. "Like what?" In the dim light from the window, she could see him struggling with himself. Finally, he said, "Like how sorry I am for what I did to us, for being too blind to see that what we had was worth more than any company, any success." Diamond's heart hammered in her chest. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm out of time," he said simply, "and because you deserve to know that letting you go was the biggest mistake of my life." Without thinking, Diamond reached for him, her hand finding his face in the darkness. "I forgive you." His breath caught. "You shouldn't—" "Probably not," she agreed. "But I do." She felt rather than saw him move closer, his breath warm against her face. "Diamond." "Yes," she whispered, answering the question he hadn't asked. His lips found hers in the darkness, tentative at first, then with growing urgency as she responded. Unlike their night at the hotel, this wasn't about conception or legacy or obligation. This was about the connection that had never truly died, the love that had survived betrayal and time and imminent loss. They made love slowly, face to face, eyes open, witnessing each other's vulnerability and desire. Each touch was a confession, each kiss a promise neither of them should be making. And when they came together, Diamond's name on David's lips like a benediction, she knew that whatever happened next, her heart was once again irrevocably his. "I love you," she whispered against his chest afterward. "I never stopped." His arms tightened around her. "I don't deserve you. I never did." During her 5th month, at a routine ultrasound appointment, they learned they were having a boy. "A son," David whispered, staring at the screen with wonder. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were soft with an emotion Diamond couldn't quite name. That night, he took her to dinner at her favorite restaurant, the small Italian place they'd frequented when they were together. Over pasta and sparkling cider, he handed her a small velvet box. "It's not what you think," he said as she hesitantly opened it. Inside was not a ring but a key. "To my lake house in the Adirondacks," he explained. "I've transferred ownership to you." It's not in the contract, not part of our agreement. I remembered how much you loved it there. How you said it was the only place you ever saw me truly relax." Diamond stared at the key, remembering weekends spent painting on the dock while David swam or read beside her. It had been their escape, their sanctuary. "I can't accept this," she said. "Please." For the first time, he allowed her to see his vulnerability, his fear. "I need to know you, and our son will have a place that's just yours. Somewhere away from the noise and pressure of my name, my legacy." She closed her fingers around the key. "Thank you." As they walked back to her loft, hand in hand under the summer stars, Diamond felt a strange sense of peace. They were living on borrowed time, creating memories their son would only know through stories. But somehow, it felt right. Complete. "Move in with me," she said suddenly, stopping on the sidewalk. David looked at her, surprised. "What?" "For whatever time you have left. Move in with me. Let's be a family, even if it's just for a little while." He cupped her face with trembling hands. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure I want our son to have as many memories of his father as possible, even if he's too young to remember them himself. I'm sure I want to wake up beside you for as long as I can. I'm sure I'm tired of pretending that this is still just an arrangement." David kissed her then, right there on the Brooklyn sidewalk, with a tenderness that broke her heart. "Yes," he said against her lips. "Yes, to all of it." My friends, if you've been moved by Diamond and David's journey so far, take a moment to hit that like button and leave a comment below. Your engagement helps our channel grow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on second chances and the power of forgiveness. Now, as we continue this extraordinary love story, remember that sometimes the greatest gift we can give another person is our presence, fully and completely, even when the future is uncertain. Stay with me to discover how Diamond and David navigate the challenges ahead and what happens when their son finally enters the world. At 7 months pregnant, Diamond woke to frantic pounding on her door. It was Marcus, David's business partner, his face ashen. "David collapsed at the office," he said. "He's asking for you." At the hospital, she found David hooked to monitors, his tall frame now gaunt, his once vibrant presence diminished by pain and medication. "Hey, beautiful," he murmured when he saw her, attempting a smile that didn't quite work on one side of his face. "Sorry about this." Diamond sat beside him, taking his hand. "What happened?" "Seizure. The tumor's growing faster than they expected." His eyes drifted to her rounded belly. "How's our boy?" "Active, especially at night." She placed his hand on her stomach, where their son was currently doing what felt like somersaults. David's eyes filled with tears as he felt the movement. "I need to tell you something. The company, I've restructured everything. There's a board seat for you, not as a figurehead, but because I trust your vision. The Stoner Foundation will fund your art center, and there's a trust for our son that goes beyond what's in our contract." "David, don't—" "Let me finish," he said, with a flash of his old authority. "I was wrong, Diamond, about everything that matters. I thought success meant building an empire, but it's worthless if you have no one to share it with." Her own eyes filled with tears. "You have us now, for however long I have left," he agreed. "And it's already more than I deserve." 2 weeks later, Diamond went into labor prematurely. The doctor cited stress and her petite frame as potential factors, but all she could think about was David, now in hospice care, fading rapidly. The labor was difficult, 17 hours of pain that seemed endless until finally, at 4:13 a.m., her son was placed on her chest, tiny and perfect, and screaming his displeasure at the world. "Gabriel," she whispered, the name they'd chosen together. Gabriel David Stoner. 3 hours later, against medical advice, Diamond had herself discharged and took her newborn son to meet his father. The hospice staff, understanding the urgency, arranged for them to have privacy. David was barely conscious, the cancer stealing more of him each day. But when Diamond placed Gabriel in the crook of his arm, his eyes opened with perfect clarity. "He's beautiful," David murmured, his finger tracing the delicate curve of Gabriel's cheek. "He has your nose, and your stubbornness," Diamond said through tears. He refused to stay put for the full 9 months. David's laugh was weak but genuine. "That's my boy." For an hour they existed in a bubble of borrowed time, a family that could have been, should have been, might still somehow be in the limited days they had left. Before she left, Diamond carefully placed Gabriel in a bassinet and climbed onto the bed beside David, curling against him as she had countless times before. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. for giving me more than I ever deserved. Don't say goodbye, she pleaded. Not yet. His arms tightened around her with surprising strength. Not goodbye. Just until we meet again. To everyone's surprise, including his doctors, David rallied after Gabriel's birth. The experimental treatment began to show results, shrinking the tumor just enough to buy precious time. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. David moved into Diamond's loft, where a hospital bed was set up in the living room. His condition remained serious, but he was determined to witness as much of his son's life as possible. He was there for Gabriel's first smile, a gummy grin that lit up his entire face. He was there when Gabriel first rolled over, cheering so loudly that the baby startled and began to cry. He recorded videos every day, messages for his son to watch when he was older, lessons about life and business and what really mattered. Your mother taught me that, he told the camera one afternoon while Gabriel napped against his chest. She showed me that success isn't measured in dollars or deals, but in moments like this, in love given and received. Remember that, Gabriel, when you're old enough to understand. Diamond watched from the doorway, her heart so full it hurt. This wasn't the life she'd imagined when she agreed to David's proposition, but somehow it was better, richer, more real. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Gabriel, asleep in his bassinet beside them, David reached for her hand. Marry me, he said simply. Diamond stared at him. David, I know what you're going to say, that I'm dying, that it doesn't make sense, that it's too late for us. He squeezed her hand. But I love you, Diamond. I've loved you since the moment you walked into that gallery opening 6 years ago and told me my tie was hideous. Despite everything, she laughed. It was hideous. It was, he agreed. And you were the only person brave enough to tell me. His expression grew serious. I don't know how much time I have left. Weeks, maybe months if I'm lucky. But I want to spend every second of it as your husband. If you'll have me. Diamond looked at this man who had broken her heart, then pieced it back together in ways she never expected. At their son, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the fragile happiness they'd created. Yes, she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, I'll marry you. They were wed the following week in a simple ceremony on the rooftop of their building. Marcus stood as David's best man, Naomi as Diamond's maid of honor. Gabriel wore a tiny tuxedo onesie that made everyone laugh. David's vows were simple but profound. Diamond, you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. You showed me what really matters. You gave me a son, a legacy of love instead of ambition. I promise to love you and Gabriel with every breath I have left. Diamond could barely speak through her tears. David, you taught me that love can survive anything, even betrayal, even illness, even time itself. I promise to cherish every moment we have together and to make sure Gabriel knows how much his father loved him. They spent their honeymoon at the lake house, a week of quiet joy despite David's increasingly bad days. They took Gabriel out on the boat, bundled against the autumn chill. They sat on the dock watching the sunset, making plans Diamond tried to believe would come true. I want him to learn to swim here, David said, to fish off this dock, to know this place that brought us together. He will, Diamond promised. I'll make sure of it. David turned to her, his face serious. Promise me something else. Anything. Promise me you'll live fully after I'm gone. That you'll love again if you find someone worthy, that you won't let grief become your life. Diamond wanted to refuse, to tell him she could never love anyone else. But she knew that wasn't what he needed to hear. I promise, she said softly, but no one will ever take your place in my heart. David's health declined rapidly after they returned to the city. The tumor began to grow again, resistant to treatment. He had good days and bad days, but the trajectory was clear. On one of his better days, when he could sit up and hold Gabriel, he asked Diamond to bring him his laptop. There's something I want to show you, he said. On the screen was the architectural plan for a building, a sprawling modern structure with walls of glass and open spaces filled with light. What is this? Diamond asked. The Diamond Anita Center for Arts Education, he said proudly. Fully funded. Construction begins next spring. Diamond stared at the screen, at the realization of her dream made manifest. David, it's all arranged, he continued. The foundation, the funding, the location. All you have to do is bring your vision to life. He smiled at her amazement. Consider it my wedding gift. She kissed him then, careful of his fragility, but needing him to feel her gratitude, her love. Thank you isn't enough. Yes, it is, he said simply. Your happiness is enough. As December arrived, bringing snow and holiday lights to the city, David's condition worsened. The hospice nurse now came daily, adjusting his medications, helping manage his pain. Diamond slept beside his hospital bed, unwilling to miss a moment of the time they had left. One night, as a snowstorm howled outside, David woke from a fitful sleep to find Diamond watching him. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That I never expected this," she said honestly. "When you asked me to have your child, I thought it would be a business arrangement. I never imagined this being love," she said simply. "Family, a kind of happiness I didn't think was possible again." David smiled, though it clearly took effort. "I didn't deserve a second chance with you." "Maybe not," she agreed. "But you got one anyway, and you made the most of it." He reached for her hand, his grip weaker than it had been even the day before. "No regrets?" Diamond thought of all they'd been through, the pain of their past, the complexity of their reunion, the bittersweet joy of creating a family they knew would soon be broken. Despite everything, her answer was clear. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Not a single one." David died 3 days later, with Diamond beside him and Gabriel sleeping peacefully in his crib across the room. It was peaceful, almost gentle, a quiet exhale and then stillness. Diamond held his hand long after it grew cold, whispering all the things she hadn't. It said all the love that remained, all the promises she intended to keep. The memorial service was small but powerful. Business leaders mixed with artists, each with their own version of David to remember. Marcus spoke of his friend's brilliance and vision. Andrea, his assistant, shared stories of his unexpected kindness. Naomi talked about the man who had broken her friend's heart, then healed it in ways no one could have predicted. Diamond was the last to speak, Gabriel in her arms. "David Stoner was many things to many people," she began. "A visionary, a mentor, a friend. To me, he was first a lover, then a heartbreak, then a business proposition." This drew a few surprised laughs. "And finally, he was my husband, my partner, the father of my child. But most importantly, he was a man who learned what truly mattered before it was too late." She looked down at Gabriel, who was watching the lights with fascination. "Our son will grow up knowing that his father loved him, that he wanted him, that he fought to stay as long as he could, to give Gabriel as many memories as possible." Her voice broke. "And I will spend the rest of my life making sure that David's legacy isn't just the company he built or the fortune he amassed, but the love he found, lost, and reclaimed. Because that is the legacy that matters. My family, if Diamond's words have touched your heart, please take a moment to show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement means everything to us, and it helps these stories reach those who might need them most." 1 year later, Diamond stood on the dock of the lake house, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. The gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and late summer wildflowers. Behind her, Gabriel slept peacefully in his portable crib, the gentle breeze, occasionally stirring the dark curls that were so like his father's. At 10 months old, he was already showing signs of David's determination, his curiosity, his intensity of focus. She took a sip of wine, remembering another sunset on this same dock years ago, when David had first told her he loved her. How different their path had been from anything she could have imagined that day. How much had been lost and yet how much had been gained. The first months after David's death had been a blur of grief and adjustment. Diamond had thrown herself into motherhood, finding both solace and purpose in caring for Gabriel. The nights were the hardest, when the loft felt too quiet, too empty, when she did reach across the bed only to find cold sheets where David should have been. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, the raw edges of her grief had begun to soften. Not disappear, never that, but transform into something she could carry without being crushed by its weight. And Gabriel, beautiful Gabriel, had been her anchor, her reason to get up, each morning her living reminder of the love she and David had reclaimed. "Your daddy loved this place," she told her sleeping son. "He said the sunset here reminded him that endings can be beautiful." A gentle wind stirred across the lake, caressing her face like a familiar touch. Diamond closed her eyes, remembering the night that had brought Gabriel into existence, a night born of desperation and bargaining that had somehow, against all odds, blossomed into redemption and love. "He wanted you more than anything in this world," she continued softly. "And through you, he taught me that sometimes our greatest gifts come from our deepest wounds. The construction of the Diamond Anita Center for Arts Education was well underway in Brooklyn. True to his word, David had arranged everything: the funding, the location, the legal framework. Diamond visited the site weekly, watching as steel and glass took shape, imagining the children who would find their voices there, just as she had once found hers through art. The Stoner Foundation was thriving under her guidance, focusing on arts education in underserved communities. She'd brought Naomi on as the executive director, freeing Diamond to split her time between the foundation, her own art, and most importantly, Gabriel. Stoner Enterprises continued under Marcus's leadership, with Diamond attending quarterly board meetings as David had arranged. She'd been surprised to discover she had a head for business, that some of David's acumen had rubbed off on her during their brief time together. The board had been skeptical at first, the artist widow they'd called her behind her back, but she'd quickly proven herself worthy of the seat David had given her. As darkness fell, Diamond gathered Gabriel into her arms and carried him inside. The lake house remained much as it had been when David was alive, though she'd added her own touches. More color, more art, photographs of David with Gabriel during those precious 8 months they'd had together. On the mantel sat a framed photograph, David holding Gabriel, both of them, backlit by sunlight, their profiles mirroring each other perfectly. Below it, in David's bold handwriting, for Diamond and Gabriel, "My life, my legacy, my love, forever, D." Diamond touched the frame gently. "We're okay," she whispered, as much to herself as to the memory of the man she'd loved. "We're building something beautiful from what you left us." She placed Gabriel in his crib, watching as he settled deeper into sleep, his tiny hand clutching the stuffed elephant David had bought during one of his better days. The nursery overlooked the lake, designed so that morning sunlight would fill the room, just as David had wanted. "Diamond?" Naomi's voice called softly from downstairs. "You up there?" Diamond made her way to the kitchen, where her friend was unpacking groceries. Naomi had come up for the weekend, a regular occurrence since David's death. Her support had been unwavering, her friendship a lifeline. "He went down easy tonight," Diamond said, accepting the glass of wine Naomi offered. "Must be all that fresh air." Naomi studied her friend's face. "You look good. Peaceful." "I am. Mostly." Diamond leaned against the counter. "It's easier here somehow. Like I can feel him more clearly." Naomi nodded. "That makes sense. This was your place. Before the company, before the complications. Just you and David. And now me and Gabriel." Diamond smiled, though it held a hint of sadness. "Did you bring the foundation reports?" "Always business," Naomi teased, pulling a folder from her bag. "Yes, everything's here. The center's on schedule to open in 4 months. The first programs are fully enrolled, and the scholarship fund has enough applications to keep us reviewing for weeks." Diamond flipped through the papers, pride swelling in her chest. "David would be so pleased." "He'd be proud of you," Naomi corrected, "taking his resources and your vision and creating something neither of you could have built alone." They settled on the porch with their wine in the folder, going over details for the center's opening gala. The night was clear, stars reflecting on the lake's surface like scattered diamonds. "Have you thought about what he said?" Naomi asked, after a comfortable silence. "About not letting grief become your life?" Diamond looked out at the water. "Sometimes. But it's only been a year." "I'm not pushing," Naomi assured her. "Just checking. Making sure you remember there's a future out there. A future with Gabriel, with the foundation, with my art. That's enough for now." Naomi squeezed her hand. "For now." Later, after Naomi had gone to bed in the guest room, Diamond found herself drawn back to the dock. She sat at the edge, feet dangling above the water, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. "I'm keeping my promises," she whispered to the night. "All of them, even the ones that hurt." The next morning, Gabriel woke at dawn, his happy babbling coming through the baby monitor. Diamond groaned, burying her face in her pillow before forcing herself awake. She found him standing in his crib, bouncing excitedly when he saw her. "Mama," he exclaimed, one of his few clear words. "Good morning, little man," she said, lifting him into her arms. "Ready for breakfast?" As she changed his diaper and dressed him for the day, Diamond chatted with him about their plans. "Uncle Marcus is coming up today, and we might take the boat out if the weather holds. Would you like that?" Gabriel responded with enthusiastic gibberish, punctuated by boat and what sounded suspiciously like Marcus. His vocabulary was expanding daily, another trait he seemed to have inherited from his father. The day passed in a pleasant blur of activity. Marcus arrived mid-morning, bearing gifts for Gabriel and news from the company. They took the boat out onto the lake, Gabriel squealing with delight as they skimmed across the water. Marcus took photos of Diamond and Gabriel for the Foundation's website, capturing their joy against the backdrop of mountains and clear blue sky. "He looks more like David every day," Marcus observed as they docked the boat. Diamond nodded, watching Gabriel attempt to crawl up the short dock ramp. "It's in his expressions, the way he concentrates. Sometimes he gets this look, and it's like David is staring right at me." Marcus helped Gabriel up the ramp, swinging him onto his shoulders. "David would be so proud of him. Of you both." "I know." Diamond smiled, a genuine smile without the edge of sadness that had accompanied it for so long. "That's what gets me through the hard days." That evening, after Gabriel was asleep and Marcus and Naomi had returned to the city, Diamond sat at the small desk in the lake house's study. David's presence was strongest here, in the room where he'd worked even during their weekends away. His notebooks still lined the shelves, his ideas and sketches preserved like artifacts of a brilliant mind. She opened the bottom drawer, removing a leather-bound journal she'd found among David's things after his death. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Gabriel, dated from the day they'd learned Diamond was pregnant until just days before David died. Diamond had been reading them slowly, one at a time, savoring this last connection to the man she'd loved. Tonight she turned to a letter dated during her 5th month of pregnancy, when they'd learned they were having a son. "My son," it began. "Today we heard your heartbeat again, strong and steady like a warrior's drum. We saw your face on the ultrasound screen, your perfect nose, your tiny hands, your feet kicking as if you already can't wait to run into the world. The doctor says you're healthy, growing exactly as you should. Your mother glowed with pride when they told us this, as if she'd accomplished something miraculous. And she has. She's creating you, nurturing you, protecting you. I watch her in awe. I don't know how much time I'll have with you. The doctors say the treatments are working, but we both know that working is relative. What matters is that I'm fighting to stay, to know you, to be your father for as long as I can. Here's what I want you to know. You were created in love. Not the love your mother and I planned, but the love we rediscovered. A love that surprised us both. A love that healed old wounds and created something perfect. You. I hope you have your mother's creativity, her compassion, her ability to see beauty in broken things. I hope you have my determination, my vision, my ability to build. But mostly, I hope you have her heart and my mind, because together, they might just change the world. I love you already, more than I thought possible. More than success, more than achievement, more than life itself. Until tomorrow, and every tomorrow I'm granted, your father." Diamond wiped tears from her cheeks, carefully returning the letter to its envelope. These words, these pieces of David, were Gabriel's inheritance, far more, valuable than the trust funds or the company's shares or the property. This was the essence of the man, distilled into ink and paper, waiting for his son to be old enough to understand. As days passed at the lake house, Diamond found herself settling into a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Mornings with Gabriel, exploring the shoreline, teaching him to identify birds and trees. Afternoons working remotely on Foundation business while he napped. Evenings on the dock, telling him stories about his father as the sun slipped behind the mountains. One afternoon, as a sudden rainstorm drove them inside, Diamond discovered Gabriel had pulled himself up using the coffee table and was attempting to walk. She watched, breath held, as he took one wobbly step, then another, before plopping down on his diaper-padded bottom. "David," she whispered, wishing desperately he could have witnessed this milestone. "He's walking." Gabriel looked up at the sound of his father's name, a name Diamond made sure he heard every day. "Da?" he questioned, looking around as if expecting to see someone else. "Yes, baby," Diamond said, kneeling beside him. "Daddy would be so proud of you right now." Gabriel pulled himself up again, determination written across his tiny features. This time, he managed 3 steps before falling. Diamond caught him, swinging him into her arms with a cheer that made him giggle. "That's it. You did it." She danced around the living room with him, both of them laughing. "Your daddy was right. You are going to run into the world." That night, after Gabriel was asleep, Diamond called Marcus with the news. "He's walking. Just like that. On his own. Already." Marcus sounded impressed. "He's not even 11 months old. David was an early walker too. His mother told me he was running by his 1st birthday." Diamond gazed out at the rain-dappled lake. It made me miss him all over again, Marcus. These moments he should be here for. He is there, in a way, Marcus said gently. In Gabriel. In you. In the life you're building. Diamond nodded, though Marcus couldn't see her. I know, it's just, on days like today, it feels so unfair, that he had to leave just when we'd found our way back to each other. Life rarely gives us what we expect, Marcus said. Sometimes it gives us less, sometimes more. With David, you got both. Yes, Diamond agreed, thinking of Gabriel sleeping peacefully upstairs. Both indeed. If you're enjoying this journey of love and legacy, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means we can continue bringing you stories that touch the heart and remind us of the power of love to transform even the most difficult circumstances. As summer turned to fall, Diamond and Gabriel returned to the city. The lake house would always be their sanctuary, but life and responsibilities called them back to Brooklyn. The Diamond Anita Center for Arts Education was nearing completion, and Diamond needed to be present for the final phases. Gabriel thrived in the city environment, curious about everything, the sounds, the colors, the constant stimulation. Diamond enrolled him in a progressive daycare 3 mornings a week, giving her time to work on the center while nurturing his social development. He charmed everyone he met, from the doorman in their building to the barista at Diamond's favorite coffee shop. He's got his father's charisma, Naomi observed one afternoon as they watched Gabriel win over yet another stranger with his toothy grin. And his stubborn streak, Diamond added, recalling that morning's battle over which shoes to wear. Once he decides something, that's it, no negotiation. The center was magnificent, a converted warehouse with soaring ceilings, flooded with natural light. Studios for painting, sculpture, dance, and music filled the main floors. A gallery space showcased student work alongside established artists. Community classrooms offered free workshops for children and adults from the surrounding neighborhoods. As opening day approached, Diamond found herself working late into the night, finalizing details, approving programs, ensuring everything was perfect. One evening, as she sat at her desk reviewing curriculum proposals, she felt a presence, so strongly that she actually looked up, expecting to see David in the doorway. The room was empty, but the feeling persisted, a warmth, a sense of approval, of pride. "I'm doing it," she said aloud to the empty office. "Just like we planned." The center's grand opening coincided with what would have been David and Diamond's first wedding anniversary. It wasn't a coincidence. Diamond had chosen the date deliberately, a way of honoring both endings and beginnings. The event drew celebrities, business leaders, and most importantly, families from the community. Children explored the studios, their eyes wide with wonder at the possibilities before them. Parents expressed gratitude for a safe, creative space in a neighborhood that had few resources for youth. Marcus stood beside Diamond on the small stage as she prepared to cut the ribbon. Gabriel sat on his hip, resplendent in a tiny suit that echoed the one David had worn at their wedding. "Before we officially open the Diamond Anita Center for Arts Education," Diamond began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "I want to acknowledge the man whose vision made this possible. My late husband, David Stoner, understood the transformative power of art. He knew that creativity can heal wounds, bridge divides, and open doors to futures that might otherwise remain closed." She paused, collecting herself. "David didn't live to see this day, but his legacy surrounds us, in these walls, in these programs, in the opportunities that will be created here for generations to come. And most personally, in our son Gabriel, who represents the future." David fought so hard to secure. Diamond looked at Gabriel, who was watching her with solemn attention, as if he understood the importance of the moment. "This center is more than a building. It's a promise to our community, to our children, and to the memory of a man who learned, in the face of mortality, what truly matters in life." With Gabriel's help, she cut the ribbon, officially opening the center to thunderous applause. As guests filtered through the building, Diamond found a quiet moment in what would be her office, a bright corner space overlooking the neighborhood. On the wall hung a painting, one of her own works, created during those early days of her pregnancy when everything was uncertain. It depicted 2 hands reaching toward each other, not quite touching, with galaxies swirling between them. David had loved it, had insisted she never sell it. "It's us," he'd said, "separated by universes but still reaching." Now it would hang here, a daily reminder of the journey that had led her to this place, this purpose, this unexpected life. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Marcus stood there, Gabriel now asleep against his shoulder. "Little man couldn't quite make it through the whole celebration," he said with a smile. "Too much excitement." Diamond took her son, inhaling his sweet baby scent as he snuggled against her. "Thank you for everything today, Marcus, for being here, for being part of our lives. Always," he promised. "You and Gabriel are family now." As guests departed and the center quieted, Diamond took Gabriel on one final tour. He was awake now, taking in the colorful spaces with wide eyes. "This is your daddy's gift to us," she told him, "and our gift to others. Someday you'll understand how special that is." Later that night, back in their loft, Diamond sat in the rocking chair beside Gabriel's crib, watching him sleep. 1 year since David's death. 1 year of single motherhood. 1 year of building a new life from the pieces of the old. She thought about the proposition that had started it all. A business arrangement, a legacy plan, a clinical transaction. How differently it had all turned out. How a night that began with conditions. "If you want me to carry your child tonight, you have to do it from the back." Had led to a lifetime of facing each other, seeing each other, loving each other without conditions or reservations. The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was late, past 11. The caller ID showed David's mother, Eleanor. "Eleanor, is everything all right?" "Yes, dear. I'm sorry to call so late." Eleanor's voice was warm, cultured. "I just wanted to check on you today. I know what the date means." Diamond smiled at her mother-in-law's thoughtfulness. Eleanor had been a surprising source of support, despite the unconventional beginning of Diamond and David's relationship. She adored Gabriel, visiting monthly from Boston to spend time with her grandson. "We're okay," Diamond assured her. "The center opened today. It was beautiful. Gabriel charmed everyone, of course." "Of course," Eleanor agreed. "He's David's son, after all." They talked for a few minutes about the opening, about Gabriel's new words, about Eleanor's planned visit the following weekend. Before they hung up, Eleanor said something that stayed with Diamond long after the call ended. "David always believed that everything happened for a reason, even his illness. He told me once, near the end, that if getting sick was what it took to bring you back into his life, to create Gabriel, then he wouldn't change a thing." "He said that?" Diamond whispered. "He did. And I believe him." Eleanor's voice was gentle. "Some people live 100 years without experiencing the kind of love you two found again. David may have had less time, but he lived more fully in those last months than many do in decades." After they hung up, Diamond stood at the window of their loft, looking out at the city lights. David had given her so much, a son, a purpose, a second chance at love. But perhaps his greatest gift had been perspective, the understanding that time was precious, that love was worth fighting. For that legacy wasn't about buildings or money, but about the lives you touched and the hearts you changed. As winter approached, bringing with it the first anniversary of David's death, Diamond found herself dreaming of him almost nightly. Not sad dreams, but vivid recollections of their time together, both from their first relationship and from those precious months after Gabriel's conception. In her dreams, David was healthy, vibrant, his eyes full of the intensity that had first drawn her to him. She woke from these dreams not with grief, but with gratitude, for having loved him, for having been loved by him, for Gabriel, who carried his father's spirit in every stubborn stance, every determined expression, every moment of pure joy. The Diamond Anita Center thrived, quickly becoming a cornerstone of the community. Children filled the studios after school and on weekends. Parents attended workshops on incorporating creativity into family life. Local artists found a place to showcase their work and mentor the next generation. Diamond divided her time between the center, the foundation, and Gabriel, finding a balance that honored all parts of her life. Her own art evolved, moving from the darkness that had characterized her work after her first breakup with David to something more complex, pieces that acknowledged pain but celebrated resilience, that found beauty in imperfection, that recognized how brokenness and wholeness could coexist. Gabriel's first birthday arrived, a milestone both joyous and bittersweet. Diamond hosted a small celebration at the lake house, inviting only family and closest friends, Eleanor, Marcus, Naomi, a few others who had been part of their journey. The weather cooperated, unseasonably warm for December, allowing them to celebrate on the dock where David and Diamond had spent so many meaningful moments. Gabriel toddled from person to person, now steady on his feet, babbling a growing vocabulary that included daddy whenever he saw David's photograph. To Gabriel, Marcus proposed a toast as they gathered around the cake. and to David, who would be so proud of his son and his wife. To David, they echoed, glasses raised to the clear blue sky. Later, after the guests had gone and Gabriel was napping, Diamond walked alone to the end of the dock. She carried David's journal, the one filled with letters to their son, and the photograph of David holding newborn Gabriel that normally sat on their mantel. The sun was setting, casting long golden rays across the water. Diamond sat cross-legged on the weathered wood, opening the journal to the final entry, written just days before David died. "My beloved son," it read, "the doctors say my time is growing short. The treatments aren't working anymore. Soon I'll have to leave you and your mother, though everything in me fights against it. I want more time, more days to watch you grow, more chances to hold you, more opportunities to be the father you deserve. But I've learned that life rarely gives us what we want. Instead, it gives us what we need. And you, Gabriel, are what I needed. You and your mother saved me, not from death, that was always coming, but from a life half lived, from success without meaning, from achievement without love. As you grow, there will be times when you miss me, when you wish I could be there for your first day of school, your graduations, your wedding. Know that I am, there in the ways that matter most, in your heart, in your mother's stories, in the foundation that will bear our family's name and carry forward our shared values. Be brave, my son. Be kind. Be curious about the world and generous with your talents. Love deeply, even when it scares you, especially when it scares you. Take risks not just for success, but for joy. And take care of your mother. She is the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. She gave us both a second chance we didn't deserve. Learn from her resilience, her compassion, her ability to forgive. I love you beyond words, beyond time, beyond the boundaries of this life and whatever comes after. Forever your father, David. Diamond closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. Not the raw, agonizing tears of fresh grief, but the gentle flow of acceptance, of gratitude, of love that transcended loss. She placed the photograph beside her, weighing it down with a small stone so the breeze wouldn't carry it away. "We're okay," she said, as much to herself as to the memory of the man she'd loved. "We're building something beautiful from what you left us." She told him about Gabriel's first birthday, about his growing vocabulary, about how he loved boats and water just like his father. She told him about the center, about the lives already being changed there. She told him about her art, about how creating beauty from pain had become not just her therapy but her purpose. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, and pink and deepening blue, Diamond felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, never that, but a turning point, a moment of transition from what had been to what could be. "Thank you," she whispered to the fading light, "for Gabriel, for our second chance, for teaching me that love doesn't end, it just changes form." The breeze picked up, rippling the water's surface, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. Diamond gathered the journal and photograph, ready to return to the house, to her son, to the life they were building together. At the end of the dock, she paused, looking back at the lake that had witnessed so much of their story. "I kept my promises," she said softly. "All of them." Inside, Gabriel was awake, standing in his crib, calling for her. Diamond lifted him into her arms, breathing in his sweet scent, feeling his solid weight against her heart. Mama," he said, patting her cheek with one small hand. "Yes, my love," she replied. "Mama's here." Outside, the first stars appeared, reflecting on the still water of the lake. Inside, Diamond rocked her son, their son, and felt for the first time since David's passing a sense of peace. Life went on. Love remained. And in Gabriel's smile, David Stoner lived forever. My friends, as our story comes to a close, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey of love, loss, and redemption. If Diamond and David's story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips for more stories that remind us of love's transformative power. In life, we often receive not what we expect, but what we need. Diamond and David's arrangement began as a business proposition, but blossomed into something neither could have. Anticipated, a second chance at love, a healing of old wounds, a legacy that transcended wealth and success. What unexpected gifts have you received from life's challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everyone and would love to hear your reflections. Until next time, remember that true legacy isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts, but in the lives we touch and the love we leave behind. This is Dr. Phillips, wishing you love, light, and the courage to embrace second chances when they appear.